From the center of the universe, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, this is the SDM Show with your host, Rob Cairns. The SDM Show focuses on business, life, productivity, digital marketing, WordPress, and more. Sit back, relax, grab your favorite drink, and enjoy the show. Here is Rob.
Hey everybody, Rob Cairns here. I'm the founder, CEO, and chief creator of Amazing Ideas at Stunning Digital Marketing. In this podcast, I have Dennis Dornon of MainWP with me, and we're going to talk all things about MainWP and why you should look at this product if you're maintaining multiple websites. Sit back, relax, grab a drink, and enjoy the show. This episode of the SDM Show is sponsored by Stunning Digital Marketing, the agency to handle all your WordPress website security needs. Go on over to stunningdigitalmarketing.com and find out how we can help you secure your website so you no longer have an issue with backups, being hacked, or your website being compromised. That's stunningdigitalmarketing.com. Hey everybody, Rob Cairns here again. And today I'm here with my guest, Dennis Dornon, the founder of MainWP. How are you today, Dennis?
I'm doing great, Rob.
Thanks for joining me today. So I wanted to jump in right away and ask you, how did founding this company come about, and why did you decide to jump into the WordPress space, if you could share?
Sure. It's a story where we were actually building something. I'm actually a co-founder with my other co-founder, Chris. About 10 years ago, we were doing affiliate marketing. I had about 500 sites. I want to say he had close to 1,000 sites. And we were doing just like PHP, real simple sites where you could just change out the word or something. So I was real big into the car affiliate marketing space. So I would just change out Ford with Chevy and change out cities and just put up these really boilerplate type websites. But then Google started cracking down on that about 10 years ago. And it just so happened that we both switched to WordPress around the same time to get out of the more cookie cutter sites and be able to put up still quick sites, but sites that were different from each other. And as we did that, we quickly both learned that it took forever to keep them updated. Then we started looking around. There was only one or two other WordPress managers at that time, but neither one of them was privacy focused. And as affiliates, especially back then, we were very focused on privacy. We didn't even tell each other what our money sites were back then. So we started looking for ways that we could make a private way of updating sites. And that's kind of how we came up with MainWP. We put that together. We hired a developer. We both put in 50% of the money to get the developer to work on it. He worked on it for probably 6 to 8 months before we actually used it ourselves. And as we used it, we enjoyed it. And we had built up a pretty good relationship with other affiliates. So we started showing them. And then they kind of started offering to buy it or join in. And that's really how we transitioned from affiliates to MainWP. And now over the years, we've gone from focusing on affiliates to more focusing on solopreneurs and agencies.
And what I would say is, for me, and I've shared this with you offline, it is the product that allows me to run my security side of my business and my update side pretty successfully. It does a really good job of managing multiple sites. And I'm managing over 300 sites, and I just honestly couldn't do it manually. So I have to thank you and your co-founder for that.
Oh, yeah, that's great. And 300 sites, that's above our average. I believe our average user has 60 sites. So you're breaking that average a little bit.
I'm about to go over 400 if there's any secret, dirty little secret in this podcast. But what I'll say is, I think what separates you from a lot of your competitors is this product is self-hosted. So privacy is your data's not being stored elsewhere on a server. And we all know about the cloud security breaches running around in the WordPress community and outside of the community right now. And because it's self-hosted, you have more control over this.
And that's really just by because of where, I guess, the DNA of the product was focused on privacy, because we didn't, like I said, we didn't want each other to know what our money sites were. So there was never a tie back. So privacy is kind of built into our DNA, and it's just kind of happenstance that now 9 years later, that's a focus of the internet as a whole. And we've been doing it from the very beginning just to protect ourselves. And it's just kind of snowballed into what it is at this point.
Yeah. And by the way, congratulations. A 9-year anniversary was just celebrated, and that's a big deal in the WordPress space. So kudos to you and your team for that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's always good to hear the good things. And I appreciate you saying that.
The thankless job of being a business founder or providing support, and you and I both know this, is it's that one or two squeaky wheels that just scream at you about all the stuff that you're not doing instead of all the amazing stuff that you do. I mean, it's like I attribute it to walking into a restaurant. Does anybody say thank you to a waiter or waitress? Almost never, unless they're not happy with something. And then everybody knows about it, right? So you kind of got to share the successes and the fails at the same time, right?
That's right. And one of the things I do is, even though I may not answer all the support chats, I look at every ticket that comes through. I look at everything that gets posted on the members group, things like that, just to make sure I'm keeping in line. And I still maintain a small group. I've gone from 500 to about 20, but just so I can, for lack of a better term, eat my own dog food monthly by using MainWP itself and making sure it's working the way we originally intended it, even though we've changed focus from the affiliates and more to the solopreneurs and agencies. Yeah,
that's an amazing way of doing it. It's like I was watching, before we record, an episode of Shark Tank, and they had Tony Howell on, who's the founder of DoorDash, one of the co-founders of DoorDash in the States. And as a co-founder, it is mandatory that every DoorDash employee must do deliveries 1 day a month. And as the co-founder, he still does DoorDash deliveries to customers 1 day a month to keep that synergy going. So in essence, you're doing the same thing. You're using your own product to make sure it keeps running properly.
Right. And I did not know that about DoorDash. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I didn't either. It's an interesting story. So a lot has gone on with MainWP. Let's jump into the 2 new extensions that you've just announced, and you've kind of done a bit of a splash. Do you want to talk about them and what they do?
Sure. Just last week, we announced our partnership with a Jetpack to release a Jetpack Protect extension and Jetpack Scan extension. That was part of the 9th anniversary. And we're going to be focusing on getting out the information more about Jetpack and how they're separating their core plugin into separate plugins. For example, with Jetpack Protect, you don't need to install the whole Jetpack plugin. It's got its own plugin now, just Jetpack Protect. So you're not taking in everything that most people don't want. So we can push that out a little bit more.
And how's that working with Jetpack having split or starting to split up their application a little bit? Has that caused any issues for you over at MainWP?
No, it's actually good for us. With the overall Jetpack Protect, it wasn't something that we actively, with the overall Jetpack, not Jetpack Protect, with the overall plugin, it wasn't something we really pushed. But then we started working with Jetpack and their team, great team. I really enjoy working with them and learning more about their system and where they're going in the future. And it aligns with what we are doing with the partnerships and third-party extensions and things like that. We're really building into the system now and getting them on board and getting our customers on board, I think would be great for both teams. Now that they're separating them out.
The other thing worth mentioning is MainWP is one of the few products that you still offer a lifetime deal on your product, correct? And why have you not moved or decided to stay with that model? Like, what has it done for you?
There's a few different reasons. When we first started, we only had a lifetime model. When we first started, going back to the opening sentence, we were really only selling to our friends in the affiliate world. So we were doing it lifetime. Then we started to expand to other people, and we just stayed with lifetime. We were with lifetime for probably the first 2 or 3 years, and I just heard over and over, and I've heard for the full 9 years, you can't maintain a business with lifetime. You can't maintain a business with lifetime. But with a WordPress plugin, you really can. If you're just a plugin, we're not paying hosting costs, obviously for our website, but not hosting costs to run the business or anything like your average SaaS would have to do. So per site and per user doesn't really affect us. So we're able to do the lifetime. And I think as long as you know, like your average LTV, the lifetime value of your customer, you can offer lifetime without hurting your business and give both yourself the influx of cash right in the beginning and also keep that customer happy. I would say the main thing I've seen people do lately, and for lack of a better term, they AppSumo themselves, which means they're releasing the lifetime at like $49. Where when we started at a higher price point. I can't remember exactly what it was after the 9 years, but I believe it was around $149 for lifetime. Now we're at $499 just because we keep upping it basically every year a little bit until we find a happy medium between people paying for yearly and lifetime and monthly.
That's an interesting philosophy.
Right. But you hear it so much. And I think if you know, especially your per unit pricing, things like that, lifetime works fine as long as you're a WordPress plugin. I wouldn't suggest it for a SaaS where you're paying for servers and things like that. But if you're a plugin with just a basic website like we have, I think it's an excellent option, especially to get your feet in the door, get people talking about you, things like that.
Yeah, this is a good idea. Not to put you on the spot, but do you know what your breakdown is, or like roughly? Is it like 50% lifetime, or is it more than that, or would you rather not say?
As far as actual breakdown off the top of my head, I don't know. As far as LTV, lifetime value, monthly is where it's at for us. Our monthlies add more lifetime value over the course of time than even we get from lifetime, even we get from yearly. So we keep with the monthly, and that seems to keep everybody happy with the 3 different price levels: monthly, yearly, and lifetime. It gives everybody a little something to pick from.
Yeah, it's an interesting philosophy. I really like it, actually. Let's move on to, I think, your number one problem that you guys have at MainWP, and correct me if I'm wrong, is probably cheap clients using cheap hosting. Is that a fair comment, or do you think I'm off base with that one?
No, that would be what causes most of the issues. If you track them back, it'd be people putting, like I said, the average user has 60 sites, but they're putting 60 sites on a $5 hosting, and then they're trying to update, 60 sites with, say they have 2 plugin updates. That's 120 updates they're trying to throw through a $5 server, which can cause some issues. So we really recommend going with the more cloud-based servers that are able to handle that kind of things. DigitalOcean, Vultr, UpCloud, or even the cloud hosting managers, as I call them, such as GridPane, Cloudways, or RunCloud. Yep. All give you the best type of hosting for those type of situations. But you can run MainWP on a small host if you only have 3 or 4 sites. But when you get up to the 60, you got to start looking into different hosting.
But if you're running 60, frankly, you should have been looking at that hosting, MainWP or no MainWP to start with. And, I always say to clients, it's a resource thing and where you want to run 50 sites. And by the way, I don't recommend running 50 or 60 sites in one dashboard anyway from a security perspective, let alone a hosting resource perspective. So it's worth throwing that out there too. But yeah.
And it's hard for me too to tell people to upgrade their servers because we do come from the affiliate background where, you're making pennies. So you want to make sure every site is at least making a couple of dollars a year so that you're able to pay for the domain and pay for the hosting. And then you'd have every once in a while, your one site that busted out to have, $1,000 or $2,000 months. And over a course of 500 websites, that starts to equal up over time.
Yeah. And I honestly, I think, different websites have different requirements. Like, are you running a 3-page brochure site with nothing going on? Then maybe a $2 host works for that. I mean, but
right. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I was going to say, but I know in my business, I have a requirement that if a client isn't on certain hosting or hosted in with me on my server, I frankly won't even touch the client's site. So that's how particular I am, just because I've learned what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah, and I'm not saying MainWP won't work on these smaller hosts. You would just have to do your updates different. If you have, 60 brochure sites and you're doing the 120 updates I talked about before, that's still hitting that all at once. I would recommend on those, if you're doing that on a smaller host, you just do them one at a time, one site at a time, and get the 2 updates at a time and go down through your list instead of hitting your server all at once and causing it to freeze up.
That's a great recommendation, Dennis. One of the things I love with MainWP is because you install a plugin on the site and then you have the dashboard, I don't have to remember all these passwords or go to my password manager for 350 odd sites and change. MainWP handles it all seamlessly once the plugin gets installed. And I think from somebody who maintains a lot of sites, that's pretty beneficial.
Right. And I think it's also a little more secure when you're logging in that way, just because we allow you to log in through, and we're not using your passwords. We don't collect any passwords. Your dashboard never knows your password. Everything goes through OpenSSL running on your server, connecting to our servers so they communicate back and forth. So there's no passwords being exchanged that could be, middleman or anything like that.
Yeah. And I would also say, just a tidbit advice, if you are setting up a MainWP self-hosted install, you should certainly be turning on 2-step factor authentication on that site, one way or the other. Like, I think if you're going to control all your sites out of one dashboard and getting access to that site gives them access to the dashboard, I would turn 2FA on that pretty quickly, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and one of the things we used to recommend is that you don't install any other plugins other than ones we offer. And we have like dashboard security plugins that will lock it down for you, but we've moved away from that recently. And we have started recommending 2FA, other security plugins that may lock you in by IP or area, things like that. And the great thing about being a WordPress plugin ourselves is that any 2FA plugin for WordPress, you just install. You can go with whatever you want. Any security plugin you trust to not cause issues, you install. And that's on you, and you're in control of your own destiny at that point.
Yeah. I actually run my MainWP installs, and I use the word plural, on subdomains that I hide. And I'll say that right away. If you stumble across them, you're going to get an under construction screen. Oh, well, too bad. And the only plugins I'm running besides MainWP plugins is Backup Buddy, iTheme Security, and that's it. And I'm running them pretty lean and mean for exactly that reason.
Right, and I believe iTheme Security, we don't have it in, because we actually have an iTheme Security extension. We don't have it built into that yet. We should have it actually by the end of this month, new options. But as far as putting that directly on your dashboard, then you can also use their biosecurity, I believe they just came out with.
Yep. Yeah,
so
you can. Help. Yeah. And for those who don't know, iTheme Security Database is driven right now by our friends over at PatchStack. So they're the ones that are driving all the security database for iThemes these days. So that might entice some people to go that way. I think it's a valuable resource if ever called one.
Yeah, and I believe a lot of the things you can do with PatchStack as far as determining and fixing, you can also do with the plugins we just released, the Jetpack Protect and the Jetpack Scan. Yeah. Will do similar things. Yeah. I believe they all read off basically the same databases. Yeah,
they do. Very much so. What is your most popular extension out there right now?
That's a good question.
Do you know?
We actually just started because we're so privacy focused. We used to have no information at all on anything. But then talking through different people, we realized that our when you put in your API to activate an extension, we can actually take that and then use that information while remaining private, because we're not taking any other information other than your public IP to see what extension has been activated. And let me just see here. I just had it a few minutes ago.
Talk about putting the founder on the spot just a little bit. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. Actually, our top ones for the month of February were boilerplate, which allows you to put different keywords, actually like similar to what I was talking about, what I used to do as an affiliate. So if you have a whole bunch of privacy policies that are all the same, but you just need to change the company name or city, things like that, yep. Boilerplate allows you just to put in those little tags, company name, almost like a PHP tag, and then you put it off to the side and it creates a page based on that company name. White label, which just allows you to change the name of the MainWP plugin on your client site. So it could appear stunning digital. Yep. And instead of saying MainWP, reports is one of our more popular ones, and maintenance.
Yeah. So let's go to reports, because we were having this conversation a couple of weeks ago or last week, and you and I got talking, and it seems if you read the MainWP Facebook group, and you're pretty active in it, there's always complaints about the reports. And I personally think, and I shared this with you, I know my customers don't read them. So if I gave them reports, they would look at me and say, why, where, how? Like, give me a one-line summary. I know you have to produce them. Is it a large minority of your customer base that's asking for them? Any idea? Or a majority? Or do you know where that sits?
I would say it's a vocal minority, but at the same time, with your vocal minorities, you want to deal with them as a business owner and make sure that they are happy. And we're doing the best we can with the reports. I think if you take a look at it, it's actually pretty comprehensive, and we're just trying to make it easier for people to design their own at this point. And we should have an update for that also within the month of March. That should make things a little bit easier, a little bit happier. But I'm kind of along the lines of you. When I worked at an agency before I even got into WordPress and things like that, we used to have to send out monthly reports, and nobody ever read them. So I'm in the same camp as you. But if our users are on because we have a feedback page where they can vote on things they want, and if they keep voting on report stuff, then that's what we're going to work on, just out of the democracy of the system.
No, I agree with you. It's funny. I actually used to send out reports, and I get more mileage on sending my customers a monthly email saying, hey guys, here's all the things I've worked on for you as a group in the last month. And here's some stuff coming down the pipe, and here's some changes I'm making. That to me is better communication than just shoving reports down, which your customer is finally going to call you and say, could you explain this to me anyway? Yeah.
What does it mean you did 20 updates and 5 blog posts and, without actually explaining the information?
Yeah. And why did you do 20 updates and so on and so forth? Yeah, I agree with you. Down the pipe, is there anything you can share that you're working on, or?
I don't want to share it because we've actually just started getting into it, but we're going to have an additional model coming out. Right now we have when I'm determining the maintenance section of it, where it allows you to update the plugins and stuff like that. We've started on the small CMS, which will be expanding. CRM, okay. Which will be expanding. And then we'll be adding another module to that. Hopefully, if everything goes right, around July or August. But as I found out with doing our reports, we tried to update that in a special way that I don't want to get too deep into. And it took us a month out of our way just to find out that it couldn't be done the way we want it to be done. And so I don't want to put any date on what's coming up or announce it until I make sure that there's nothing like that that's going to happen to us.
No, I can understand. We all know, any of us have been in a software game, including me, because I was a program analyst in a prior life. Sometimes timelines just don't go the way they're supposed to go. and that's not making light of it. We've all been there. And then you get to release date and people say, well, you said on such and such release you were going to get this done by this date, and it doesn't happen. And, most of us understand, but there's always a couple people who don't, right? So
right. And it's a nice thing about having multiple developers too that work on the project. So we were able to, I don't want to say waste that month because we learned a lot. It just didn't happen. But other things were still getting done. Like we released those 6 extensions last week while we were working on updating this report. So it's nice to have the multiple developers in there. And I'm not a developer myself, but I'm able to watch them and see what they're doing.
Nor me, I'm a designer. I am not a developer anymore. And frankly, I don't want to be. So there you go. Really enjoyed talking about MainWP and highlighting some stuff. I know you're very active in the MainWP Facebook group. So there's one spot to get a hold of you, right? If somebody else wants to reach out to you or your team, what's the best way?
I just put up a new website that redirects to my DennisDornon.com, but it's easy to remember, Dennis with MainWP.com. It'll just send you right to my site, and you can click on contact me and it'll open up the Calendly, and I'm happy to talk with anybody for as long as they want to about MainWP. And to reach the team, you can go to managers.mainwp if you need support, or just go to MainWP directly.
Yeah, and check if you haven't checked out MainWP, take the time. I think, for somebody who's used it for a number of years, you'll fall in love with the product pretty quickly, and it will certainly make your website maintenance life a little easier. So thank you for doing that, Dennis, and thanks for joining me today. Much appreciated.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate all the kind words. It's really nice to hear.
Such a pleasure, Dennis. Have a great day and talk soon. This episode of the SDM Show is sponsored by Stunning Digital Marketing, the agency to handle all your WordPress website security needs. Go on over to stunningdigitalmarketing.com and find out how we can help you secure your website so you no longer have an issue with backups, being hacked, or your website being compromised. That's stunningdigitalmarketing.com. A very special thank you to Dennis for joining me on this edition of the SDM Show. Thank you for listening to this edition of the SDM Show. The SDM Show is brought to you by Rob Cairns and Stunning Digital Marketing. For more information about Rob Cairns and Stunning Digital Marketing, go to stunningdigitalmarketing.info. From here, you can connect to us on social media, go to our website, and even go to the podcast to subscribe. This podcast is dedicated to my late father, Bruce Cairns. Dad, I miss you very much. Keep your feet on the ground. Keep reaching for the stars. Make your business succeed.